मम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनाशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna, welcome everybody. So today we will discuss something related to conflict resolution. Before we understand conflict resolution, it's a skill to be learned. But conflict is not caused only amongst unevolved people, but even people with faith, people with religious affiliation also, like we were discussing last week. Even they have a conflict, right? And when that conflict becomes more and more stronger, it has the power to create war, radicalization, killing people also. So therefore, when the Niti Puranas speak about cooperation, there is a beautiful example which is very inspiring. It is explained that when you see the family of Lord Shiva, what a great family. In Lord Shiva's family there is bull, Nandi is there. Lord Shiva's the great Bharya, Bhavani. Now her Vahan, vehicle, is tiger. And bull and tiger are not best of the friends, they are not even the friends. One is the food for the other. And then there is Ganpati, who has the mouse as Vahan. And then there is Kartikeya, he has peacock. And Lord Shiva's ornament, the snake is food for the peacock and mouse is food for the snake. So in the nature, when we see in the house of Lord Shiva, they have very cooperative life. They live in great cooperation. There is no fear, there is no resistance, there is no domination, but there is a beautiful cooperation. But at the same time, when we see in the reality of this world, the reality of the world is, it is but natural that we become product of our surrounding. And what is our surrounding? Our surrounding teaches survival of the fittest, right? A fittest person, while using crudeness or sophistication as a tool, he becomes like a lion, roars like a lion, because lion in the forest is the king of the animals. Why? Because there is a power. And in the modern world, unfortunately, the survival of the fittest, which is the prakriti, this is how the prakriti operates. Jiva, jivasya jivanam. That one animal or one being is food for other being. That is a natural reality. One of the great historian, Will Durant, explained there are three realities of biology. What is the first reality of biology? The first reality of biology is the competition, spardha, right? So without that competition or with that competition, we see what happens in the world. So competition is the first reality, And even when people cooperate, cooperation is a tool for greater kind of competition, maybe in the corporation, in the country, right? Whenever there is a threat, sometimes the countries, what do? They create a fear of other country. In fact, the Pakistan, the the general, the very reason he created this, so that when you show that the threat from enemy is there, the entire Pakistan got united. That also happened in India also. No, he was using it political advantage, right? Cooperation for the greater competition. But the underlying principle of life is competition, spardha. In the Mahabharata, Bhishma explains to Yudhishthira Maharaj, even amongst the newborn babies, especially as the family is privileged, in the royal family, more number of children, when they are born, the other child unconsciously feels threatened by the newborn baby. The entire story of Pandavas, as Yudhishthira Maharaj took birth, the great Gandhari, whom our Vyasadev called as, Dharmic personality, Dharmashilata, Gandhari at Dharmashilata, but even being Dharmashilata, when she got the news that Kunti has given birth to Yudhishthira Maharaj, her spirit of competition turned into threat, turned into insecurity and an envy, and she struck her belly. Immaturely, the flesh was born from her womb, and Vyasadev touched upon it, helped them to be born, but the inherent quality of competition continued to remain, and rather than minimizing it, Dhritarashtra and his surrounding simply kept on increasing more and more, right? So therefore, the poetic understanding, the inspirational understanding is Shiva's family. But the reality of Prakriti, the first is competition. We see that survival of the fittest. And the second biological lesson is the lesson of selection, right? Again, the competition is there and the selection is there. In the reality of selection, what happens? In selection, if there are 100 seats in a college and 40,000 students are aspiring for getting selected, where is the question of they would cooperate with each other? Where is the question of they saying, okay, you take this seat, it's okay if my child doesn't get it? It is not possible, right? Because the surrounding, which is full of competition, survival of the fittest, and our system also facilitating, enhancing, increasing the concept of competition through the sports, right? The IPL final, I am a Kannadiga, right? But you can see the toxicity of the fan when they have nothing to take and give. Hype, right? That competition, what does it do? That competition gives rise to systematic presentation of that competition in the form of looking for the seat in the college, looking for the increased profit in the company, or looking for winning the gold medal, winning the cup. What is that? Selection, right? In the selection, elimination is the reality. Getting seat, getting degree, getting trophy, all that Prakriti provides, but we simply enhance it more and more. And the third biological lesson, what it teaches, is that Prakriti says whoever breeds more, breeding, a biological breeding or a narrative building or making your PR stronger than somebody else's PR. So that third principle of breeding, because Prakriti tells us very clearly the the prerequisite for quality is quantity, right? Now, if this is the reality of Prakriti, how is it possible for someone not to be affected by that? It is but natural, right? So therefore, when we understand these principles very clearly, the biological world, the physical world, the physical human society, how do they operate? They operate on the principle of survival of the fittest. And if the survival of the fittest is facilitated more and more, either you are in the hunting stage, the history has 3 stages. Whether you are in the hunting stage or you are in the AI or industrial stage, the competition doesn't stop. Competition becomes very sophisticated. In the 1971 battle, in the Kargil battle, there was less resources to penetrate and attack an enemy country from a distance, right? So now you can imagine, without even entering into the enemy's territory, you can create great havoc. So imagine in the present situation, when the liberal values, the democratical values, what do? The democratic values create more and more disparities because the privileged people have greater resources. Right? Somebody had sent a video in regards to how do you get admission in the top colleges in America, Harvard or in Oxford in London. How do you get there? It may sound that they are part of the meritocratic society, but you know what? More of the student, they come from the privileged background, spending $75,000 compared to $12,000 where other students go to a public school. So along with their merits, intelligence, there is an investment also. And that will give rise to limitless disparity. And along with the AI, when it is introduced, imagine the gap between those who are extremely privileged and those who are ordinary will simply increase more and more and more and more. So then the question is raised, this is how the society will function, this is how it will work. And when these things happen, when there is a greater disparity, it is but natural two qualities come into prominence. The privileged feeling proud, arrogant and insensitive, and the underprivileged feeling complete humiliation. Along with that humiliation, it will give rise to envy. The entire socialist movement is what? It is basically systematizing the envy. And what is capitalism? Capitalism is nothing but systematizing arrogance. So when there is a battle between envy and arrogance, then society will suffer like anything, right? So therefore, when that becomes the mindset in the modern world, why people are suffering so much mental health? Because there is limitless intensified inner conflict. And that inner conflict takes one to such an extent, the deep conflict which is cultivated within them. Even if you take to the path of spirituality, of course, if you take serious path of spirituality, if it is very superficial, even that spiritual connection will give rise to feeling that I am special compared to others. My bhoga is better than your bhoga. My deities are better than your deities. My understanding is better than your understanding. My affection for Prabhupada is greater than your affection. Like someone said, imagine how one can be so indifferent in regards to the entire parampara. Somebody said that we don't care for Shastra. We don't care for all the Shat Goswamis of Vrindavan. What we care is only Prabhupada's Vani, because for us Prabhupada's Vani is only Shastra, and therefore we are better situated. Our loyalty is much greater than your loyalty. There is no question of discussing with you. Even having the path of spirituality, one can be exclusivist from either side. And those who do not take to the path of spirituality, even they have the conflict to such an extent. Imagine in the liberal world, in the left ideology, in the radical left, right, which is percolating everywhere, which is coming to Indian colleges also, wherein the young people, young 19, 20-year-old college going student, apparently educated. Of course, this does not happen in this in the STEM section. It happens in the humanity, gender study, critical theory of race, critical theory. So one becomes so much in conflict. Is very interesting. They start questioning the gender identity also. There are rules in some parts of the world, and they become so vehemently identifying that gender is a social construct. That means if I call myself as a man, if somebody calls herself as a woman, they do not see it as a biological identity. They say this is not the biological identity because gender is very fluid. It's like a water, right? You have decided through thousands of years of exploitation. What is that? Actually, there is no construct biologically. It's a social, it is a man-made, it's a human-made construct, calling someone as a woman and somebody as a man. Otherwise, gender, there is no specification. You can choose whatever you want. It all depends upon you. To the extent you can call yourself as a cat, you can call yourself as a dog, you can call yourself as a man, you can call yourself as a woman. That is not the responsibility of society, that is the individual responsibility. I remember talking to one student, she explained after reading something very good article about women, so nicely presented. But this Indian girl said after reading, what I see, there is lot of truth in it. But the empowerment of women, which is presented from the purely Western, not Western, modern, liberal, radical left, what is it? It is more than empowering, it is a fragmentation of identity, separating your intellect from your mind, separating your mind from your emotions, separating your emotions from your physical reality. So there is the continuous conflict within one personality. So therefore, when they interact with others, they are made to only see differences. With added technology, right, added artificial intelligence, what will that do? That will not create the Abheda philosophy. We are talking about the Bheda and Abheda. In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about seeing the same nature in all the living entity. In the 18th chapter he speaks, in the 4th or 5th chapter he says, the Pandita is able to see, the Chandala, the dog eater, and the dog, and the learned, educated, seeing that same spirit, right? That Atma, that has completely disappeared. More and more disparities are there on every field. That is the psychology. When such a psychology is existing, it is but natural that conflict become part of everybody's existence. And with such conflict, it is extremely important to understand what is the solution. Because such conflict, what does it do? It has a great contradiction between the faith and doubt also. Right? There is a faith, but along with that faith, there is a great doubt. In the modern world, we see when people are in romantic relationship, right? When they are deeply involved in people's life, along with that deep involvement, there is a great faithlessness also, distrust also. How can you handle faithlessness and full of doubt? Therefore, that conflict, what does it do? It first disrupts the individual on every level. It disrupts the individual in the family level. There is a fragmentation, and eventually what do they become? When you are fragmented, when you cannot find meaningful relationship in the society, you want something to control where there is no resistance. Right? Either a dog or a gadget. Because the dog does not fight you. The dog becomes submissive. There is no resistance. People prefer to have a dog than to have human being with them. People prefer to have dog than to have meaningful philosophical discussion. But our Yudhishthira Maharaj, the great Pandava, he had a dog also. Not that he did not have a dog. In fact, in the Swarga Rohana Parva, an interesting story, when they are going back to Swarga, through Swarga, yes, they were achieving perfection, but the Mahabharata version, they are going through Swarga. As they were approaching, right, when they learned the news of Krishna's going back to the spiritual world, they were going back. As they were crossing the deep Himalayan mountains, the higher and higher mountains of the Himalayas, each of the family members start falling. First Draupadi falls. Bhima asks, my dear brother, why she is falling? And then Yudhishthira Maharaj gives an explanation that she had greater love for Arjuna, even though she was everybody's wife. She did not discriminate. But here, Yudhishthira Maharaj, as a representation of Yama, he is scrutinizing, finding rare qualities of excellence. And if that excellence is not there, you become an ordinary human. That's another perspective. So Draupadi fall. Then Nakul, then Sahadev, then Arjun, then when Bhima is also falling, he's asking, and all of them they fall, but Yudhishthira Maharaj continues to move forward. It doesn't stop. Now when you read this story in the Mahabharata, original Mahabharata, Vyasa's Mahabharata, there is no conflict. You don't feel that Yudhishthira is hard-hearted because you read it, right? You find there is a purpose. But there are many people who have written the books. So what do they see there? They say insensitivity in Yudhishthira Maharaj. They see the duality in Draupadi, regret in Draupadi, anger in Draupadi. As she fell and they did not stop, she blurts out. This is not Mahabharata of Vyasa. This is the Mahabharata of those people who are actually mentally sick. There is a great conflict, but they are very articulate in presentation. They know how to write, they know how to speak, but their mindset is exactly opposite of what Draupadi is seeing. They are superimposing their actually mindset in the form of seeing another version. It's a very dangerous reality, right? If you start seeing fire as a water, you are imposing. That is what social construct is. They believe that actually why fire should be called as a fire only. Why fire has to burn only? Who made this? I don't accept it. Fire is a social construct and we can find water in fire. These are universal reality, unchangeable reality. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. They'll say no, it is also mathematical hierarchy. It is to maintain the poor people in certain limitation, and therefore they made this social construct. 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. It can be something else also. So Draupadi had no issue, and we will answer that. Draupadi has no issue, but the issue is there with this lady who wrote a book. So Draupadi fell and she said, oh, I should have married Karna. He had all the qualities of all the 4 Pandavas. Hare, where did you get this? In the conflict, right? You can create anything to such an extent that I don't need anybody. Prabhupada is our ultimate. We don't need Rupa Goswami. We don't need Sanatana Goswami. We don't need Shastras also. Prabhupada Vani itself is Shastra. That means they have not studied Shastra. There is a difference between commentary and Shastra. Prabhupada has given commentary to the Shastra according to time, place, circumstances. For his commentary, there has to be explanation. As the changing time, you don't change his books, you don't change his words, but you need to have people to explain the commentary coming in the parampara line. Right? So this lady gave her own explanation. But when Yudhishthira Maharaj continued, original Mahabharata, according to our Vyasadev, Vyasa Preshit, the Rishi Preshit, the Devata Dutas came to take Yudhishthira Maharaj back, and there was a dog which had followed Yudhishthira Maharaj. Right? Now people cannot justify Yudhishthira Maharaj dog to their dog. Bahut bada antar hai. There is a big difference. So Yudhishthira Maharaj told, I can only come if this dog is allowed to come with me. Sounds very silly. Sounds very primitive. From the Yudhishthira perspective, not the modern people's perspective. They also want their dog to sit in yajna. They want their dog to eat their prasad also. Yes, there is a space for the dog. We are not saying there is no space. Therefore, we are quoting the Shastra. So, this dog, Yudhishthira Maharaj said, has to come with me because it has followed with me. So the Devata said, Arey, come on, why are you stopping yourself from going to the heaven for this ordinary dog? So Yudhishthira said, I understand. The point is, this dog has followed with me. And the Devaduta said, my dear Yudhishthira, you are so attached to this dog, but when your family, those who stayed with you for entire life, when they fell, you did not stop. Why are you stopping because of this dog? Yudhishthira Maharaj gave very simple, seamless, very dharmic answer. He said, my dear Devadutas, my wife, my brothers achieved marana dharma. उनको मरण धर्म प्राप्त हो गया. They got marana dharma. When the marana dharma comes, then you cannot stop for them. The journey has to continue. But this dog has continued to live, so I cannot go on my own. Such a logical, cooperative, there is no conflict, there is complete integration in his answer. Right? So therefore, when we study the conflict, understand the conflict, that is the nature of Prakriti, but our aspiration is Shiva's Prakriti, the cooperation amongst the animals. The bull, the tiger, or a lion, tiger, the peacock, the rat and the snake, if they can live in harmony, is it possible to experience that harmony in the world where there is continuous conflict, competition, selection and breeding? How is it possible? And that is what the story of the Pandavas, right? It is so realistic. When we study the story of the Pandavas, what do we learn from it? We learn within the conflict also, cooperation becomes very profitable, very productive. Therefore, when Krishna came as the peacemaker, right, when he came as a peacemaker, what did he tell Duryodhana? He did not teach Duryodhana Bhagavad Gita. Krishna only told Duryodhana the profit of cooperation. The beauty of Krishna, right, when we study Bhagavad Gita, when we study Mahabharata, there are two factors of Krishna. One is the loving Krishna and one is the wise Krishna. The loving Krishna, he helps us to transcend from this world. And the wise Krishna, he makes us smart to live in this world. We need both, to live in this world and to give up this world. Dono bhi chahiye. L-E-A-V-E and L-I-V-E. So the wise Krishna is so wise. When he is speaking to Duryodhana, what does he tell him? He talks to him about cooperation. In that cooperation, he talks to Duryodhana about profit. He says, if you make friendship with the Pandavas, even the Devatas will not look at you because you become undefeatable. Nobody can defeat you. Right? So unfortunately, Duryodhana did not find Krishna's words to be worthy of hearing. Why? Because Duryodhana was growing with arrogance, growing with envy. He couldn't, you think Duryodhana was dull and stupid? From a political perspective, he knew that as much as I cooperate with the Pandavas, my position will always be subordinate to them, even if I become the king. Krishna proposed that, he said, you be the king, let Duryodhana, let Pandavas become subordinate. So even if he has the position of being the king, but he will not have the influence of the king. Right? One is the position and one is the influence. We have seen it. The person at the highest post, he had the position, but the influence was somebody else only. Becoming a prime minister but not having that influence. So Duryodhana knew. Therefore, Krishna's proposal was extremely reasonable, extremely logical, easily implementable. But the problem was Duryodhana's psychology did not agree to it, because why? He realized that even if I give them 5 villages, these people will within no time make the 5 villages into 550 villages. They'll make into 5,550 villages. They'll have the power and influence over everybody, because he had seen this before. When Pandavas left from Hastinapur to go to the forest, large number of the citizen started following Yudhishthira Maharaj. In fact, 60,000 Snatakas. These are all highly evolved, educated, intellectual rishi and their children, Snatakas and their teachers. They left with Yudhishthira Maharaj, and there is a beautiful debate between them and Yudhishthira, saying that we don't want to be called as the citizen of Duryodhana. So he knew whether I agree for 5 village or 5,000 village, the influence of the Pandavas will remain greater than me and I can't handle it. Better to fight and die. So imagine that was his reality. So Krishna's peace mission failed, not because the proposal was not good, but the psychology of Duryodhana was not ready to cooperate. In the Mahabharata, when there is a story of coronation, right? I have not come across that verse, but I have read it in an authentic source. Beautiful. When the king is coronated, the advice is given to the king. As I said, Prakriti teaches us survival of the fittest. But Sanskriti, education, learning, knowledge, what does it teach? It teaches cooperation. When you take a very dangerous animal, even for that matter tiger and lion, when they are taming that tiger and lion, at least for some point of time, for some time in their daily schedule, they know how to be submissive and peaceful to the human beings also. They don't harm generally because they have tamed. The wild elephant, when it is tamed, you become friend. Monkeys, people have seen becoming friend, right? A street dog, unknown dog turning into a pet dog, there is a huge difference. And we see that with proper training and education, even the most competitive person, most savage person has the facility to become refined. Why? Because competition is the reality of this world. But cooperation and seva and contribution also is the part of the constitutional nature of the jiva. So if the jiva is given that surrounding of cooperation, if jiva is given that surrounding of the desire to help others, that jiva will flourish in that other aspect also. What we see in the animals also can be seen in the human beings also. Therefore Krishna offered that, but Duryodhana did not agree. So here we are going back to the Rajasuya sacrifice. When a king is appointed, one quality of a king, Krishna speaks this to Yudhishthira Maharaj when he was about to prepare for Rajasuya sacrifice. Diversity in nature. What is the diversity? People are from different race, different languages, right? No language is superior to any other language in regards to presenting their own pain and their pleasure. It doesn't matter, even if you are speaking a most unrefined language, but the person who is speaking is conveying something very meaningful, that language is good, right? Yes, technically, grammatically, and then construe all that. When we study Sanskrit, it has a different league only. Let us not get into that, but every language has something to contribute, right? So the Mahabharata explains, when the king is coronated, how should he behave with the diverse population of his country? Is he supposed to make them of one language, one nature, make a rule that everybody only worships Krishna, no other devatas, all the temples of other devatas will be removed? Did you ever find like that? In fact, the Mahabharata through Narad Muni explains the beauty of diversity. And how does a king should rule? A king should rule in such a way that he should be like the garland maker, and there are hundreds of varieties of flower. The string is one, the thread is one, but the flowers are of different variety. And every flower, even sometimes we put ordinary leaf when you want to make a beautiful flower, to make that flower display itself, make that flower appear more significant. What do? You put some leaves around it, and leaves are not as valuable in regards to cost, in regards to its status, right? What does it do? But that leaf enhances the flower, and with the flower, leaf also become meaningful. So imagine he was told that treat the citizens having their own substantial nature, you intertwine them, thread them in such a way. Thread is one, but different kinds of garland. But when there is a competition, when there is a exclusivity of superiority complex, what happens? Then such people, when they lead, they are like burning a tree. The flower, the fruit, the budding of the flowers, the beautiful leaves, the twigs and the branches and the root of the tree. When they burn it, what happens? The tree become one varna. One varna means one kind. And what is it? It is ash. Ashes, right? So he says when you try to create one varna, it is pralaya. There can only be unity in diversity. There cannot be unity while we remove the diversity. When the diversity is removed, only one aspect, we want to create one language. Then what does it do? It basically destroys the diversity, right? And we see that in India, the diversity of language. Whether you consider Hindi Rashtra Bhasha, when we were growing, we were told Hindi is our Rashtra Bhasha, and we had no issue only. Why? Because we learned it. That did not minimize learning my Kannada. Now this Kannada concept, what is happening in Bangalore, it is not the state problem. It is only a Bangalore problem. We grew up in a most conflicting place called as Belgavi, where the Marathi and Kannada conflict would happen. I picked up Marathi also, had a great Marathi friends and great loyalty. Now also I read Kannada books, right? So, and the greatest misfortune, when the loyalty without diversity, what does it do? You are not even deep in your own loyalty. I guarantee those who are fighting for Kannada language, because those who are intellectuals, they don't need to fight because they don't fear anything. They have great depth in their understanding. And those who are fighting, their own children do not study in Kannada medium. They don't know how to read and write also. So imagine the diversity. What does it do? It gives rise to greater capacity to handle, other people's ideas. In fact, it is explained. What is Udara Cheta? What is magnanimity? Magnanimity is not only giving charity. Magnanimity is accepting somebody else's opinion and also to be having some value. The truth has different layers of reality. Ekatvena pratatvena bahuda vishwatomikam. Right? The same truth can be seen from a different perspective. Satya ek hai, darshan anek hai. Truth is one, but the perspective, how people see it, different, right? So, what does it do? That sanskara, that education, which the Pandavas had. Pandavas fought against the Kurus not because they wanted to fight. Pandavas fought the Kurus because it was for the greater cooperation. After fighting the Kurus, every year without fail, they perform the last rites, right? And one of the interesting part of the Pandavas, and you see, if you really want to see great healthy growth in people, it is important that you should allow people having a different opinion. In Duryodhana's family, only once, for your information, only once Duryodhana was challenged by his brother Vikarna during the gambling match when Draupadi was about to be disrobed. Vikarna stood against. Even Karna, for that matter, all the fans of Karna try to defend him. The mindset of Karna was so conflicting. He saw women to be untrustworthy. They have no loyalty. He said Draupadi, being a wife of 5 men, she is worse than a prostitute. Therefore, it doesn't matter whether you make her naked or she is clothed. Bring her in a public place. It was his advice. Even a prostitute has a dignity. But when there is a great conflict, you only see conflict everywhere. So there was no conflict among the Kauravas because they did not have a second opinion. When you don't have a second opinion, only one opinion is followed, that is the beginning of pralaya. What is pralaya? Pralaya means one varna. Pralaya means one color. Pralaya means one identity. There is nothing but destruction. But the creation enhances in having a different opinion. And the Pandavas, even though they were more cultured, more refined, more educated, more ambitious, at the same time extremely cooperative with each other. Imagine every day, as long as Kunti was there with them in the forest, maybe they continued in their 13, 14 years. Of course, there was Akshay Patra only, right? Draupadi got the Akshay Patra. So Mahabharata doesn't mention that Bhima was eating half of the food and rest of the half was eaten by the Pandavas. But when they were in the forest with Kunti Mata, imagine amongst the boys every day. Draupadi was also not there. Panch bachche, 5 boys, not fighting about food. Every day, whatever they would collect, half would go to Bhima, and rest of the half was basically distributed amongst each other. Why was like that? Is it not injustice? No. Is it that they were given a higher values of Vaishnava philosophy? Yes, they were Vaishnavas, but what they knew psychologically, they recognized their own self first. They recognized Bhima's self also. They realized the distinction between their self and Bhima's self. They did not see it as a capitalism on behalf of Bhima, and then we are forced to practice primitive socialism where we have to share with each other and Bhima will take the largest share. They knew that that is his need, that is his requirement, and his contribution is also great. In regards to food, there was no conflict. In regards to Yudhishthira Maharaj becoming the king, there was no conflict. In regards to marrying Draupadi, there was no conflict. But of course, there were many conflicts. But the foundation of their conflict was based upon having a healthy different opinion. So there were many arguments. Emotions were also involved. But the end of the day, what would happen? They still had a great harmony within their own self also. Great harmony. For example, now Draupadi was harassed by Kichak. Imagine Kichak is harassing. He is trying to exploit her. So when Kichak wanted to exploit her, he kicked her also. And top of that, in the presence of Yudhishthira Maharaj, Virata, the great Virata, he made very slanderous comment against Draupadi. He said, we don't know what transpired between them and her in a private place. And Bhima was there. Draupadi heard this. And Yudhishthira Maharaj, being very cool personality, right, the time was clicking. They were supposed to finish their exile incognito. And he saw the anger in Bhima's eyes. He said, don't uproot the tree here. He gave a symbolic answer. And Bhima was livid. He was angry, but he couldn't do anything. And he went back. And Draupadi, that's such a beautiful part of the Mahabharata. I request people to read verse by verse. So when Bhima was sleeping, because, Bhima having that powerful body, working very hard, कितना भी चिंता हो उनको निद्रा आ जाती थी. He would sleep very nicely. And Draupadi came to him. After coming to Yudhishthira Maharaj, she shakes him, right? She shakes him and wakes him up. And she said, how the hell are you sleeping when I am going through the trouble? He said, then Bhima said, what happened? He said, what happened? What will not happen having Yudhishthira Maharaj your husband? She makes that statement. Right? She makes that statement. But even though she made that statement, that's very Draupadi. Many times she was angry, livid with Yudhishthira Maharaj. But when it came to serving, when it came to giving some gift, the Saugandhika Pushpa previously, right, in the forest. She comes to Bhima. I said, can you get this flower? I want to offer it to Yudhishthira Maharaj. So this different emotions, the anger, the karuna, the madhurya, everything had its own place. They did not deny anger. They did not deny Veera Ras. Every rasa was there. So then she said, you have to do something about it. So Bhima said, you know what, if I break the bones of Kichak, we'll be exposed and we'll have to go back to that 12 years and 1 year. Draupadi said, I don't care for it. You have to choose a living Draupadi or fulfilling your vows. I don't care for this. I care for my dignity now, at this moment. Right? So what do you think Bhima has to do? Bhima had to harmonize between not breaking the rule and fulfilling the desire of Draupadi. So the beauty of Sanatan Dharma, the beauty of integrated mindset, it has the power to reconcile the opposite. The opposite does not create pain, the opposite creates exciting coordination. It becomes a yoga. Right? Arjuna was in great conflict. How can I kill Bhishma Dev? His problem for the war is not Duryodhana, easy to kill him, not Dushasan, easy to manage him. But how can you shoot Bhishma? How can you shoot Dronacharya? They are more than your life. But with the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna did not make Arjuna hate Bhishma Dev. Krishna taught Arjuna to harmonize the anger for dharma and no cessation of his love for Bhishma Dev. It was incessant love also, at the same time anger. And the beauty, when you read the Mahabharata, the harmony between anger and affection is most beautifully presented by Vyasadeva. It is not a poetry, it is not unreal, it is extremely real, it can be implemented. There are hundreds of stories where people have done like that, where punishing their child while loving the child. So then Bhima basically destroyed Kichaka in such a way, it did not become a big news. Of course, it came to the ears of the Kurus eventually, but fortunately, it already crossed the time. One more interesting story of the Pandavas, where they got married with Draupadi. The whole story of Draupadi getting married to the Pandavas, if you see from the very Vedantic perspective, or if you see from the commentaries of Madhvacharya, what is it? Draupadi is that same personality, but she manifested differently according to whom she was interacting with. The aspect of Sachi was there when she was with Arjuna, because he's a kind of Amsha of Indra, right? So she had the power to interact in such a way that there was no conflict. This is the drishtikon of the Devatas. But if you see from a human perspective, when Narad Muni got to know that the Pandavas are marrying one woman as their only wife, he comes to them and he gives them a very human laws, pure rules and regulation about interaction beyond their own culture and Sanskriti also. The culture is there, the Sanskriti is there, but the discipline also becomes very important. And they took that discipline to their heart. They followed their discipline to the teeth also. And what was the discipline recommended by Narad Muni? After telling the story of Sunda, Sunda and Upasunda, how Tilottame bewildered them and the brothers killed each other. Their base nature, the nature, Prakriti became very prominent, and that was exploited by the Devatas to cause conflict between the two, because they are Rakshasas. Eventually they will fight. But the devatas and the human beings who want to be in the qualities of the devatas, they have a discipline in life. And that discipline in life, they practice to such an extent, whether Bhima, Nakula, Sahadeva and Draupadi, they had a rule, okay, this time Draupadi will be with Yudhishthira, this time she'll be with Arjun. So they did not practice that spontaneity. So it is explained, when you follow the rule in particular regards, that rule gives rise to spontaneous relationships, which Pandavas followed. Right? Whether with being with Draupadi, whether with fighting Kichaka, and one of the story which Prabhupada mentions, when Ashwathama had to be punished. Right? Bhima wanted Ashwathama to be punished. Draupadi wanted Ashwathama to be forgiven. And Krishna asked Arjuna to do, and Prabhupada writes there. Both are in one sense authority, both are very dear. How do you reconcile between the two opposite instructions? Like our Lakshman went through. Lakshman was told by his superior Ram to stay there, do nothing but just stay, protect Sita Devi. And Sita Devi being his mother, that's what his mother told him. Sumitra Devi told, he said, now for you, Janak Rani itself is Sumitra. And she is giving order, you go and protect my husband. Don't stay here. Your intentions are not good. She went beyond being a mother. Now, how do you reconcile between the two? And Lakshmana, he is showing he was not able to do that. Sometimes it is okay. If you are not able to do, yes, there are consequences. Right? The Ram, Lakshman, Sita had to face the consequences on a human platform. On a divine platform, yes, Ravan had to be killed. But here Arjuna, when he was given the opposite instruction, how brilliantly he actually took away the life of Ashwathama by taking away his substance, that money, and still fulfilled the desire of Draupadi of not killing. So therefore, with smartness, with intelligence, with understanding the whole concept of sanskara, sadhana and discipline, it is possible to walk in the journey of cooperation in the midst of limitless competition, selection and elimination in the Prakriti. Because eventually when you see Prakriti in a deeper perspective, beyond the superficial survival of the fittest, there is the underlying principle of yajna. The leaves fall in the winter so that the roots can still receive the nourishment. Sometimes the farmer removes, just coming, those who are like budding fruits, he removes it because he realizes the tree is not yet nourished to start giving fruits. So the perspective of a rishi or a farmer is that this bali, this sacrifice, that commitment will only enhance the growth of the other sibling. So by learning this, what do we learn? The first thing is that we learn that competition is real, conflict is real, and the modern world is cultivating the conflict to such an extent they are not even considering gender is a reality, creating an artificial unity, and that artificial unity is like the charcoal which is burnt to ashes. But the Mahabharata and Ramayana, what do they teach? They teach, understand your flower, understand somebody else's flower, see the shape, see the size, see the flavor, and add that flower in a unique way. Well, they maintain their identity, but they stand as a harmonized, even though they are different. Thank you very much.